Okay, yes, this may be my craziest video yet, as I am literally recording it in the bathtub. But, I wanted to make this random video because, and it may be really echoey because I'm in the bathtub, so I didn't really think about that. But, this is a video for those of you who are perhaps feeling the energies that we were talking about in this week's reading. Right now in the middle of the week when it's sort of been at its peak, and I don't know whether you saw that, but it's almost like I can now look back on the week and I can map everything as if I can just map the entire process of, I knew that these would be teachable experiences, whatever was challenging me. And of course I don't have a full scope of what those energies are, but I do feel that I have planted the seeds of what needed to be accomplished through all of these challenges. The illusions of the sun square Neptune shattering and being rebuilt into a sort of a new reality based on how our attitudes evolve. And then, on the other hand, the strong Saturn Uranus square energy that sort of seems to define where all of my issues with authority and lack of control were manifesting in my life. And it's been weird because it's like I feel like this is the first time I can truly say that in such a short period of time I experienced and felt all of the energy that I had studied in advance regarding astrology. Anyway, I wanted to share that. Then beyond that, of course, we need to actually move into how we've been handling these energies and how we're practicing self-care. And, for me, I had a couple of things that were related to externals or aesthetic sort of, I don't know how to put that, but sort of a snobbery around those things, an attachment to the idea that things aren't valuable if they're imperfect. And how that manifested for me was that somehow I managed to get a huge scratch on my car that looks like it was keyed, and I went through that sort of childish disappointment of feeling like, first of all, why did this happen to me? Then it was like I realized I had to walk through my feelings, and I was like, okay, really what it comes down to is that I'm irritated that I feel like I deserve to use my money for other things than fixing a car. But it was like an inner child kind of tantrum, that reaction that I had, and in the past that would have lasted much longer, and I sort of saw the absurdity of it and accepted it, and it was compounded then with a much more personal thing, which was that I have an implant front tooth because I knocked my teeth out in a pretty gnarly accident, like 9 years ago now, no, something like that. No, how many years was it ago? 8 years ago. And my implant came loose, and it's just been irritating, but it's also forced me to really move through all of my issues of I could for the longest time in my life focus on one imperfection on my face and want to literally tear my skin off. And when I had that accident, because it was pretty horrific in terms of what it did to my face, I had to become accustomed to, I had to I had to move away from an ideal of perfection that I held myself up to, and that was part of a long, dark night of the soul that unraveled over the course of many years of, coming into that acceptance. And I did have that thought process this evening of how, really everything comes down to the reality that we create based upon the feelings that we have about certain things. For example, for me, the fear of aging was not so much about, getting closer to death. It was the loss of power in the world based upon what I insisted was a measure of power, which would have been my physical beauty. So I was always chasing perfection where it was completely impossible. And that probably pushed me to have a lot of experiences that got me, some very unique and privileged experiences in my life because I pursued perfection on so many levels, not really understanding that I was so far from it that it was a farce, really, from a spiritual perspective. But it was a needed process, and I really got that sense this evening of being able to fully understand. No, you are outside of time, so you love your experiences of who you were physically and mentally when you were 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, and you will continue to have the experience of understanding the privilege of having the body that you have and the everything that you have at any given measure of time in this lifetime, because that's exactly as you're meant to be. And for me, that I know that might sound really, really simple to some of you, but to me, that's a very, not just liberating, but very enlightening and alleviating perspective, because our world is so pornographied and sexualized that our entire identities are limited to this in many ways, because it is a primal aspect of who we are. Everything in our culture has basically taken advantage of that and kind of turned us into primates in a certain way. That whole, the way that sexualization really is at this point in our society. We think it's all like wrapped up in the technological gift wrap of crap, that makes it seem sophisticated. But underneath it all, most of what our culture is about nowadays is no different than an ape pounding his chest before, essentially in human terms, raping another, ape. For lack of a better way of putting it. So, I hope that makes sense. And self-acceptance, sort of came in a moment unexpectedly after I had gone through a bunch of hurdles and felt really physically and mentally exhausted and at my wit's end. And today was a huge test of that. And then somehow tonight, after removing myself from an insane work environment of treachery and just plain bizarreness constantly, and realizing that I was putting all of my sense of self-worth into how poorly I fit into the wackadoo ways of all these people. And I realized that I'm so out of alignment with my conscious spiritual practices as a result of prioritizing work that I wasn't even able to step out of it other than in total escapism. So that shift in the energies, whatever is happening right now as I record this, which is why I'm recording it, and I hope that some of you watch it. I was very confused because a lot more of you watched part 2 than part 1 of the 2-part weekly, and it was sort of weird because I thought, oh well, if you didn't see part 1, part 2 must have seemed a little disjointed. But however you enjoy these videos is the universe's will. But I think this is a good one for just from a point of view of us having a little bit of a quiet moment. I mean, as I say, I'm lying in the bathtub with like blue lights on and candles, and I was very oddly sort of guided to have this experience and put on this really amazing album that I love with Ram Dass, with I think it's East Forest is the name of the band, and it's a spoken word sort of mantra style soundtrack of enlightenment. I think it's called Ram Dass if you want to check it out, and it really is, I don't know, it's transformative when you really are needing to get out of a dark place. And I fell into sort of a meditative state and closed my eyes. And I was thinking about all of those crazy perfect geometric shapes that we see when we close our eyes and we just kind of let go. And I was just thinking, like, well, I don't know if it was my thoughts or if it was from somewhere else, but it was like, when you close your eyes, you see the universe. When we talk about sacred geometry and whatever, it's like literally when you close your eyes, you see millions of the same shape, or at least I hope you do, because I do. I mean, I see a lot of different things, but they're always in patterns, and it's like you have to think to yourself, well, your eyes are processing so much in order to create those patterns. I mean, I know it sounds a little like weird, and I am a stoner, but I mean, I think this is valid. And it seems beyond the scope of like what our minds are usually doing, which is trying to form sentences and plan how we're going to respond to situations that might never happen, you know what I mean? And then you close your eyes and you're seeing like everything in a way that corresponds to what we might imagine the universe to be, infinity. And if you can do that and you can relax into that feeling and detach from your body, you kind of are experiencing a form of transcendence. And in that transcendence, you can let go of a lot of baggage, which brings me to another thing that I wanted to get to, which is if any person watching this has not been communicated with or has been sort of distanced in some way, or has felt that way as a result of something I've said or something I've done that has provoked a reaction, or, because I know that there's people that stop watching these videos too, like sometimes because I say things that they don't like, or maybe they don't want to see in themselves or whatever. But I just think it's really important when I'm in a state of self-awareness and my conscience and consciousness is sort of vast and open, that to be aware that we are unconditional love at our core, before we lose our innocence, before we're corrupted, before we're victim to myriad circumstances. There is that pure state that exists in us, and I know that's always in me. It becomes clouded because life is really fucking hard, and people who are not self-aware are cause a lot of pain basically. And I want to say that too to those of you. I should finish that thought. So I just want to say that I do have that unconditional love for anyone who might feel distance from me. And I think it's important to remember that when we take distance, it is not to hurt another person. It's not to force them to change. It's to take the time to love ourselves in our process and to give ourselves the right and the fullness of experiencing our feelings and having them honored, if not by others, then by ourselves, with whom we have the purest form of love accessible to us, if we are kind enough to give ourselves the opportunity to feel that way. Which actually covers the second point that I was going to make, because that's really what I wanted to say to anybody who is experiencing, in these challenges, a lot of what's difficult to move through is disappointment. And what is disappointment? Disappointment is when we've been living under an illusion, when we've been attached to outcomes that are dependent on others, the unpredictability factor that exists outside of our own illusory free will. I know it's a lot of words and a lot of concepts to sort of package, but it is essentially, these are all sort of pathways of what consciousness really is, right? Is acknowledging these things and understanding that our responsibility is always to ourselves and to be on the path to experiencing an attitude, an embodiment, a transcendence made entirely of love. And it's so hard, so hard. It really is. But when we can find a quiet moment to ourselves and we can listen to ourselves and then say, okay, that's enough. Now take care of yourself. Now nurture yourself. Now find a mantra, find a way to clear the mind entirely. Close your eyes and see those shapes and remember what the purpose of your experience here on earth is all about, which is just to be the best version of you. And that means that every experience that you have that's challenging, every feeling that's overwhelming is divinely chosen for your path, because your journey is entirely unique and you are exactly where you need to be at this very moment in time. And that is self-forgiveness first and foremost for all the nonsense of projecting that you need to be something other than what you are right now. And I suppose to acknowledge that the only way to be anything better than what you are now is to be in total acceptance that every moment that you're experiencing yourself is the best moment of you, no matter what's happening in the outside world. And yeah, I'm sure there were lots of other things I wanted to touch on, but I don't want to talk forever. But I just want you to know that you're not alone if you've been going through a lot of sort of contemplation around the circumstances of your life and maybe feeling a little weary from the journey. I promise you that that is going to evolve in ways that you cannot imagine, that I cannot imagine, and that we should be excited about no matter what it is. Because if it's new, it's life.